Hey, Alexandra, thank you first of all for joining us today and taking part in this video series that we're putting together looking at agentic AI and AI agents. Firstly, as I say, welcome to the conversation. How are you both?
Thank you.
Thank you. We're good.
Great.
Ladies first, Alex.
Yeah, this is going to be fun with a couple. We're going to be talking across each other. But hey, that's the nature of these things. Just chip in. We've got a number of questions that we're going to go through, as we have been asking with all of our technology partners. Really keen to get your view on this AI agents, agentic AI, where we think it's going to be having impact. There's been a lot written about how it could impact the traveler and how the traveler is going to search and book in the future. We've heard a lot written about hotels could be using it to improve efficiencies and operations, marketing, sales. But there seems to have been less discussed about how it is actually going to impact you guys, the hotel tech providers. So that's really the angle of this conversation that we're looking to take, looking at the opportunities, looking at the threats, posing a few questions of how and if we might see the market shift. So without any further ado, let's kind of dive into it with question one. I'm always a positive kind of person. So let's start with the positives. Let's start with the opportunities. What unique opportunities do you see AI agents and agentic AI unlocking for hotel tech providers, especially in creating the more autonomous, scalable, and personalized solutions?
Yeah, I can start there, and Alexandra can chip in, but. Essentially, I think there are primarily two angles to this, which will impact hotel tech providers, and as a consequence, also then hoteliers. I think first of all, if we look at how we use, Atomize was acquired by Mews in November last year, and that's what's early sign of that as well, in terms of AI. But the way we are using AI internally within, and each tech provider will start using it internally for everything from processes, reporting, and how you look upon things, and simply making things more efficient internally for each tech provider will enable each tech provider to lower their cost, which of course also will then impact end of the day the cost for technology for the hoteliers, which so is in a way is very good because it's driving higher gross margins for tech providers, and that will result in lower cost of tech end of the day for hoteliers. The second part of that would be the external part as a tech provider. What can we offer? How can we incorporate AI in our offering to the sort of industry? And there also, where I start off by saying early sign was with the acquisition when Mews acquired us in November, is where if you acquire a lot of companies and if you have multiple of products, and especially if you're in an acquisition, AI agents, you can easily let AI work to embed different of these products in a more easy way than you would have to do without it, right? So it opens up also the possibility to do more consolidation, but also a bigger offering, seamless offering to the hotel industry at large, I would say.
Yeah, makes sense. Alexandra?
Yeah, but exactly as Alexander is saying, those are like the two big areas that we see. And at the end of the day, we have a responsibility as a tech provider in today's market, as AI opportunities and possibilities are moving very quickly. We need to make sure that we're really challenging ourselves and really are on top of that. Not only from feature and functionality perspective, when we are incorporating AI functionality into, for example, into Atomize, into the revenue management system, but also internally, how do we utilize, for example, do we create our own AI agents, and how do we utilize those? Does it help us to be more efficient, or does it help us to give more accurate answers or give quicker answers, and so on? And we actually have a great example of that, which is quite funny, that we within
Alexandra's laughing, right? I want to hear.
yeah, exactly. So within Mews, we have actually challenged across the board, and this comes from top management. They actually challenge all departments and department leads to kind of come up with how they can build their own AI agent and how it can serve or improve a purpose within their respective department. So actually, we basically built and deploy custom AI agents, and Alexander did his own chatbot. I mean, this is quite fascinating because it's basically, you know, Alexander, I mean, no excuse, but you are not an engineer. I'm not an engineer myself. I have no coding experience, but we can actually today build our own chatbot, and we can use that, you know, internally, just like in a couple of days, which is fantastic.
Yeah, this is also exactly. And when I got this assignment with the scene from the senior leadership in Mews, I was shocked, literally, because just like Alexandra said, like I cannot code one single line. So, but the beauty of it just proves what I just said earlier as well, that anyone can do. I mean, build and ship an AI agent. And the beauty of it all, when I started this, it took me, you know, probably six to 8 hours to do that, this AI agent. But the beauty of it all, one of the instructions we also got was that you are not allowed to ask anyone about how to do it. You only allowed to use AI as a sort of as a teacher.
Yeah.
So all that work, and it is quite amazing. You know, you start off by the simple question, sort of how I want to build an agent.
How do I build an agent?
Yeah. What are the components, you know? And you get the answer, and then you take those and you go deeper and deeper, and eventually you actually able to build that. And it took me 6 to 8 hours. Next time I will build it, I'll probably do it in less than 30 minutes.
Wow.
Just what explains it all. If I can do it, anyone can do it. So and this says a lot, I think, about where we're going with AI.
I agree, and it'll be interesting. I think a lot of these things, it's always about the application, how it's used, how people adjust to it. So it'll be fascinating to see how that works through. But I think, to your point, and more importantly, it's just the speed as a non-coder, what you were able to actually do when you were just provided that challenge. And I think as an example, that leads me neatly onto really the purpose of coming up with this series is, okay, if it's that simple in a sense, and you could do it in 30 minutes, maybe next time round, I'm interested to know your take on what are the most pressing threats that these AI agents and agentic AI could pose to existing hotel tech companies.
You want to start, Alex, this time?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, we discussed this earlier today also. And I think the threat that it can pose to us is basically a little bit what I mentioned before, that we need to be on top of this, right? And it's going very, very quickly. So we need to be on top of it. We need to play with it. We need to, you know, create our own chatbots, basically. We need to understand what it is, the use and alternatives and opportunities that AI is providing to us. But I think some of the threats that we discussed is, I mean, now I think for Atomize or for Mews, we would not be considered part of the old legacy systems. Maybe
we're you're far removed from the legacy systems.
Yeah. So we think those older tech systems that have a very built-in, maybe a little bit bureaucracy or infrastructure in the way they built the technology, I think with very kind of fixed features and limited automation capabilities, I think those will have a problem on how to be able to integrate AI tools or AI functionality, because that's not the foundation they are built up on. You know, it's a complete different way of thinking. So that's why basically that legacy systems may become completely outdated because they are not adopting quickly enough. Another thing we also start talking about is one threat could be that hotels will become very good at building their own AI tools. And that can potentially be a threat to us, of course. You know, groups or big hotel groups with lots of data and IT resources, they may be able to create their own like customized agents. And these tools can do things like, you know, forecast demand, set prices, personalized marketing, all in-house. So that is a potential threat. But on the other hand, we also think that change for the enterprise segment will probably go quite slow. We think more. I think Alexandra made a great metaphor before. If you look at the startup community, the startup companies are usually the ones who are driving innovation and driving change. And we think that this will also apply for the SMB segment, like the independent hotels, those that are kind of leading, and that drive usually comes from the owner or from the, maybe the GM. And it's also easier to change. It's easier to play and try different things rather than if you're a big, huge enterprise. So we believe that may be a threat, but especially amongst the smaller ones, because it's easier for them to implement it.
Interesting.
I just want to add to that what Alexandra also said here is that I think also one thing is those that are sitting on a legacy tech stack that will have difficulties adopting sort of AI in general. But then you have on the opposite side of things where you have this risk for a hotel tech provider if they rely too much on AI solely on AI as such, because that will just be it's a vehicle in a bigger context as well. So it belongs to a bigger context. So meaning, since AI will most likely be commoditized for the many reasons we just mentioned here, right? It's a very dangerous thing to rely on AI. That is the value building or value add to the hotel community. It needs to tie to a more deeper rooted, a deeper foundation of a business model and a business idea and an overall offering as a layer on top, rather than the AI as such being the offering itself.
I think that's a really good point, and it's a point that hasn't been brought up so far. So
I usually I usually mention, I mean, in the context, like if you want a car, you don't go to a car shop and buy a steering wheel, right?
No.
You go there because you want something that takes you from A to B, and that's the car itself.
Yeah,
we see very much the AI agent or even AI in general as features on the car, right?
Yes,
Ties it together, it's packaged it up very nicely, but the end result must be a bigger context, which is.
So it's like, so when you're buying a car, as you say, you can evaluate the features, which AI is. You're then looking at the ride, so because each car can get you from A to B, but some do them in different ways. Yes. And then you've got that whole feel and brand. We look at how BMW changed their strategy a number of years ago, and it was all about the driving experience, and so there's multi-layers to this. But your point around AI, if you rely on AI, I mean, from an investment point of view, if you are looking to invest in a company, you are looking at how hard it is for someone else to replicate what that company is doing. And if you're relying on AI a lot, well, it's going to be very easy to replicate. So suddenly you have no value. I mean, the cost of entry is negligible.
Exactly, and we have seen, we know there are, startups or even scale-ups today that rely, I think, too much on AI, and there will be new entrants as well, startups and so on, and those will have, if you ask me personally, I think they will have a hard time to survive or sustain over time.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. I just want to pick up on something you were saying a moment ago about the groups and the large groups and large management, because that struck me as a natural, maybe they'll learn from the fact that they let OTAs come about and take so much of their business, and maybe they'll think a bit differently. And I mean, they have massive value. I mean, their data that they have, if they could actually get that consolidated and clean, to me it seems a natural step for them to then build their proprietary agents. And so, you touched on that, and then also felt that there could be challenges with them doing that, and the benefit could be of the smaller groups and the independent hotels. Well, how do you see the hotel landscape changing in terms of tech adoption through these agents?
Well, I think there's two sides of the coin. If you look on the bigger enterprise and the groups, I think it also has to do with, how unified is the tech stack that they have? Is it kind of fragmented, different products trying?
The old silo scenario we all talk about, Exactly.
Because then you might have different AI agents in every silo, and they might might give you different answers, or different insights.
They'll all be chatting to each other and still get the wrong answer.
Like me and Alexandra, we're sitting in our own bubble, and but basically, I mean, it might be a challenge because it won't be an aligned. It might give you different answers. It might provide different insights. It might have conflicting data layers that it have access to. So I think, depending on how unified your tech stack is, and I think that's also why we are seeing this like consolidation in the hospitality among tech vendors in the hospitality tech space, because we want to be able to offer that entire ecosystem. It makes sense that the data is kind of sits in the same place, because then you can really get most out of it. So it has to do with like data segmentation and where the data sits, I would say.
Yeah.
And it's also not only technical question as such or infrastructure. I mean, just look at PMS adoption in terms of on-premise versus cloud. Who were the ones starting off with cloud? Were they in the SMB? And the last one were the enterprise. It was not because the Marriotts of the world.
No, they didn't take the
finances to do it, but it was more of a political and bureaucracy question, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, they're big. They are slow. They are not as quick to adopt, and they can't afford to test something and fail, right? As well, which is a different story for a SMB or small hotel, and even for startups from the hotel tech vendor perspective. They are the ones that can test things, and they can afford to fail and pivot, right? While if you are a bigger hotel tech provider or a big hotel group, you cannot afford to do that. So you rather send in the small infantry first and see what works and what doesn't, right? Before you scale and before it is adopted to both in terms of the big hotel tech providers, but also for bigger sort of enterprise hotel groups as well.
Okay, that's interesting. It poses a number of
questions.
Yeah, and kind of different strands to follow, and some of them we've identified in the questions I'm asking you and others. But it also, your point around the speed and agility of the smaller groups and independent properties to be able to do things themselves. I had envisaged a large group move away, develop things internally, because we're seeing investment into their data and AI teams if you look across. And then the hotel vendors would end up focusing a lot more on the small groups and the independents. But if they're moving quicker, they may develop themselves. So where does that actually leave the hotel tech landscape?
That's a different angle to it, because if you pose it like the question, if you phrase it like this, if you are a great, let's say that you build airplanes, great finances, everything works tremendously well, and then someone says like, well, that sounds that this works well. Let's also build cars. No, that will never work. Same thing here with hotel groups, hotel operators. Why would they start doing tech? I mean, it doesn't make sense if, I mean, it's completely different verticals as such when it comes to, in a way. So in terms of competence, right? So for that reason, I'm strongly the one against hotel operators to build tech, because that's not the mission. That's not even the reason why they started the hotel company to start with.
So you think the enterprise end will be fine, so to speak, in that way?
They should still. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is when they decide to buy their own tech stack and build it themselves, because that's not their mission. Their mission is to build guest experiences that are remarkable, not to build tech. And I think we see this over and over again, and that was the reason why we can see this now, without mentioning names, that the bigger brands out there, some of those are really starting to look at sort of, why have we even built our own tech stack?
Right.
Because it costs a lot to not only maintain, but also if you're going to be in the front end of stuff. When it comes to tech, it will cost so much to invest into that and focus and so on. And So I don't think it's sustainable simply for hotel groups to build their own tech stack.
No, that makes sense. Alexandra, what's your take on it? I think you've indicated some, but
well, I think I was just thinking, can you mention one big enterprise hotel brand that you would say is really early adopters that are really kind of moving the needle in terms of
Adoption?
Yes.
I guess
Did
not.
you mention one? So yeah, I was just thinking about I can't either, but I mean, so still I think there's a lot of work left to do, and it takes time for a bigger ship to kind of change direction.
Yeah. So does that, and you've mentioned your acquisition end of last year, and we're seeing other consolidation and acquisitions going on. Do we envisage a different path being taken then, where if we have small groups, independent properties leaning into, well, let's just develop an agent that we need utilizing our data, do we need to, maybe we look more selectively at the actual hotel vendors that we need to partner with? So does that narrow down their engagement with vendors, and we therefore start to see if the enterprise piece is going to lean, if the big groups are going to lean more into larger platforms, greater integration, greater innovation, are we just going to see a higher level of consolidation around half a dozen core platforms that bring all that data together, do the consolidated data, clean it all up, and that will service the larger medium-sized groups? And then what happens in the smaller groups and independents becomes an interesting space to watch. What's your take on that?
Well, I think AI agents in general, as I mentioned earlier, will enable is to make more products seamlessly embedded to each other. As such, it opens up that is easier in a way to consolidate today than it has ever been before for that reason, from a tech perspective. And that means from a hotelier's perspective that I think that hoteliers will see more consolidated offerings as well, and more of a one-stop shop. We can also see this not only when Mews acquired Atomize, but also in other parts of the ecosystem, that consolidation has actually started to pick up. And I don't think we have even seen the speed of consolidation that we will actually see in the next years to come, because it will speed up even more, I think. Because that's what AI agents are opening up for as well.
It's what it's driving, isn't it? It's driving that.
Yeah. And it doesn't help, open. It's not like AI agents if you can't access data in a way from other platforms, if it's closed data, right? So that's the reason why I believe that smaller hotel tech providers is becoming more and more difficult to operate as a standalone solution. You need to integrate, and you need to, and one path doing so would be with AI agents, and by doing so you can only open up as much as in a solo state, but it opens up for consolidation in general, I would say. So, and I think it's a good thing also for hoteliers. They don't need to shop multiple of vendor agreements for getting their tech stack together, and so on and so forth. So I think it's a good thing.
And an example, just to add to that, I mean, looking at Atomize and Mews, when we have a full native integration, I mean, that's where we are heading, and we have, an RMS fully embedded into the PMS. Then we share a lot of interesting data, in terms of guest data that we wouldn't have access to as Atomize standalone. And there are many interesting things that you can explore by having that guest data. You can start looking at personalized pricing. You also have all the spaces in terms of not only rooms, but what about dynamic pricing beyond rooms? And when you have AI functionality on top of that can kind of provide you insight, you can connect the dots in a much more interesting way. I mean, talking about the connection between revenue management and marketing, for example, or sales and revenue marketing in a hotel, what if you would know that there are certain dates where you have a low demand, and you would know that you would need to kind of boost occupancy and the RevPAR for those dates. What if that automatically can be linked to your marketing, insights or marketing platform, saying, hey, you should boost, you should target these countries or these markets with this type of campaign for these dates to make sure that we can fill up the rooms. When you have the data in the same kind of ecosystem,
where you can access and utilize it. And suddenly you and that is literally the breaking down the silos, and that would be like having your revenue manager and your revenue director and marketing director talking to each other, but here you've got the agents are kind of making those connections already. It's like, but it is like, I mean, I was having a conversation, it will come out on one of the videos that we will release, and it's the way someone explained it is looking at it as almost a digital replication. So it's like each of the core critical roles has a digital replication of their role and their function, and they're doing a lot of that initial analysis and joining of the dots, and then coming back with recommendations or proposals, and then that strategic human in the loop, as they talk about, then has that oversight and maybe either pushes a button. And as that trust builds, I mean, you guys have been leading it around the automated pricing, so we all recognize the need to have a chance to look at it, and then as we can build that trust in what we're being recommended, we can allow the autopilot to take on more of the actions. And we've got a similar process underway here as well, haven't we?
And the biggest sorry, go ahead, Alex.
Oh, it's like having like the revenue manager, the marketing manager, and like the sales director in the same room having conversation. But maybe that would take them 1 week to figure out exactly what's the most proper campaigns I'm going to run ahead, because we need to reach these targets. But the AI insights will provide you that in if you seconds, of course need to train and everything, but in seconds,
of course,
and you just need to make sure it's aligned with your strategy, your brand, and tonality, and all of that, and that we still need humans for, right?
And Alexandra, what you mentioned here, what you touch upon here, is probably the biggest evolutionary step that will happen in revenue management in the next years to come. Is that, I mean, for since we started Atomize, the biggest sort of frustration for hoteliers in terms of what they've been waiting for, if you ask me, would be to go from RevPAR to TravPAR. And as everyone is talking about it, but it has not happened. And from what I understand, it's been a discussion for 2 decades or more. And the reason for this, why I'm not surprised, the reason for this is because RevPAR is connected to inventory. And TravPAR is connected to guest, is at spend. So that's why it has never happened. So what Alexandra touches upon here is to move from inventory pricing to guest pricing will actually be the trigger for opening up for true TravPAR, because when you can identify a dynamic guest segment based on the data you have, that this dynamic guest segment has historically spent this much, in sale revenues. Then you can also clone that segment and go to marketing and actually fire off a campaign towards those that have a highly likelihood to spend more in your hotel based on various components, both on that guest data, but also in terms of, as you mentioned, Alexandra, not only nationality, but on postal code, for instance. And that's, for me, is very exciting. And
but it kind of becomes evidence-based, intelligent campaign, doesn't it? Because you've got a reason why you're doing it. And although you have that information to hand, you're just pulling together many more pieces of the puzzle to then decide how are we going to do it and really tailor and personalize it.
And all that is tied up. I mean, you cannot connect those dots without AI. I mean, you need to do those in real time many times, or close to real time, identify those segments and go out, right? And sort of trying to capture in a way that kind of segment now, not in 2 weeks from now, right? So very exciting.
Very exciting. Lots to think about. And I think that leads me to a question I want to ask you. I started at the beginning of this by saying the focus is not on hotels, but hotel tech vendors, I'm going to switch that hat for a moment and just put myself in the seat of a hotelier. And the reason we thought we'd do the series around this time is because these are when the first thoughts start to come about with regards budgeting for 2026. And obviously technology is one of those things that you consider. There's so much hype around this. So it's great because, you know, people are talking about it, things are being written, events are going on. But from a hotelier point of view, I mean, goodness me, it could be a distraction. It could be confusing. It could be almost like paralysis by trying to get my head around it. I mean, if I'm sitting there early stages evaluating my budgets for 2026, what should hoteliers be considering at this moment in time and trying to absorb all that is going on and work out a plan and a strategy?
Yes, we actually discussed this earlier, me and Alexandra. We were basically just wanted to challenge that question a little bit because we were
for it.
You know, should it be necessary to plan for a dedicated AI budget when we think it's becoming like a commodity? Like we think instead that you don't have to specifically, it's more in the strategy what you want to achieve, but we don't think that it specifically need to budget for AI. I think it will be incorporated in every, you know, decent tech solution out there. It's like the metaphor with building a car. You know, you buy the car because you want to take yourself efficiently from A to B, and the car might include sensors that will tell you, you know, when it needs to go to service and so on. But that's not included. And I think it's the same here. It's more has to do with your strategy and your overall, you know, your overall operational strategy. And how you can make that more efficient. Also, how communication, how you want to communicate with your guests, you know, how much should it be automated and seamless, or how much should be the personal touch and like in-person conversation. So it more has to do with brand and strategy, I would say, because we think it will be incorporated in. And as mentioned to the first question regarding that actually these tech solutions will become cheaper. They will become, you know, the cost will probably decrease for investing in tech since we can use AI to develop it more effectively. So that also another point to why you don't have to. It's more in the strategy, I would say. Yeah,
that makes sense.
I agree, and I just want to add to that, and I absolutely agree to what Alexandra just said. But I think also what is important, though, rather than budget, is to experiment, because to understand the power of AI and also how easy it is to implement for that reason as well. I think that is what you should budget in your time to test it and try it and even build your own AI chatbot, for instance, that I did. I think I've learned so much by doing so, but at the same time, how easy it is. So that has been a great thing to go through, I think, when I built that AI chatbot. So, but as Alexandra says, I don't think they should budget in for AI specifically, because it's rather increase your budget for tech in general.
Yeah.
That incorporate AI, but not AI specifically as such.
And just get you take a slightly different angle on the same question then, based on something you said earlier about this consolidation into platforms. I mean, historically, we could sit there and almost think, right, okay, I am going to be investing in some new tech or changing some tech that I'm going to have. I'm going to look for best of breed in each of these different component parts. So if I'm now sitting there and thinking about my budget going forward, and of course, there's loads of caveats, you know, it depends on what licenses I've got and what I need and all those other bits and pieces. But, you know, before end of last year, you were pushing best of breed. Now you're an integrated platform. It's like, as a hotelier, which way do I sit and go?
Yeah, I think great question. I think the thing is, it doesn't really matter if you are using best of breed platforms across, if they don't seamlessly integrate with each other or add if they give you different responses to a question. It's really frustrating as a hotelier, I think.
Yeah.
For that reason, I think it would be very difficult to be a standalone solution, even if you are best of breed, because as a hotelier, you don't really care if you're best of breed in a certain sort of vertical. If that sort of best of breed software doesn't talk to your overall tech stack and it provides a consistent response. For instance, if you have one system saying that making a forecast for Q3 this year that's going to go down, and another part of your tech stack saying it's going to be a positive quarter, like how
Which
does
one do you believe?
yeah, that's going to be really confusing. So for that reason, I think it's actually for that reason, I think the consolidated sort of offering is the best of breed overall. That's an overall thing. Where AI agents will not help you, right? Because if you have confusing or conflicting data in across your tech stack, it will be very confusing even for an AI agent, right?
Yeah. Alexandra, anything to add to that? Like slightly altered
yeah,
question.
I think also what's important to remember here is kind of that you set the framework for AI agents, because even though you might have, in the best of world, you have an complete integrated tech stack, and you have data shared between systems, and you have no conflicting, insights. But I think on top of that, you also need to think about how you can train your AI agents and kind of set the framework. I mean, for our chatbot, for example, it's trained to specifically answer questions about Atomize and revenue management system, how it works, pricing logic, features, integrations, onboarding, but it's not designed to give you like a recipe of a lasagna.
Yeah.
But it could if you ask it,
I'm sure Alexander could make a little tweak and we could get a great recipe.
Yes. Whatever you want.
Exactly. No, but it's quite fun also sometimes. And you have to always be a little bit of like train it, make sure that it's accurate, and you know how it is with ChatGPT. Sometimes it gives you have to be a little bit critical to the source. And sometimes it gives you answers like, that's not really correct.
Not quite true.
Yeah. So just kind of be cautious about that framework. That's what I would add to this discussion. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Okay, final question, conscious of your time, and again, thank you so much. Hoteliers get a lot of pressure, investors, owners, whatever it comes from, and they're sitting there hearing all this noise back to working out their budget, what do they want to do? But to me, this seem like massive risks that are also associated, and maybe... And what we're asking everybody is, okay, what would be your words of caution that you would offer out when they're thinking about using AI and going down this potential path, let's say?
Do you want to start?
I can start with the guest perspective, and I have seen this some examples of this actually. It's like, let's say you have a hotel website, you're using one chat. If you take chatbots as an example, you have one chatbot there, which is run by one system. And then in the app, the application, where you kind of have your booking reservation as a guest and everything, you have a different chatbot. Well, that's not aligned to your kind of, it's not the same tonality. It's not giving you the exact same answers. It's kind of driven by different data sources. That will be really confusing for the guests. So I think important is really to think about, okay, what is the strategy in terms of how we're going to use it, if we're going to use it within communication to make that more direct and more effective and more like efficient from operational perspective. We need to make sure that we do that aligned and that we don't have like this fragmented silos. So I think that's really important. Start with the strategy, also decide which areas you're going to implement this. Is it within communication with guests, or is it like in the back office to support you with automated, pricing, or what is the strategy? And identify those areas and be cautious of how you implement it. Yeah, and make sure that it's aligned with your strategy and your brand. That I would say from a guest perspective.
Alexander?
No, I agree. I mean, it's not like just run and implement AI everywhere, but really know as Alexandra says, that it ties to what you want to achieve. The second thing, I think the biggest risk actually is not to do that. Is to be left on the train station when sort of, because this train has already departed.
Yeah.
And you're already, if you haven't started, you need to get on, if you ask in general. And it's not AI only, but also tech in general, which is incorporating AI. So, but I think experiment is great. That's the lead theme from my end today.
That's a message
Experiment and sort of. And if you don't have an idea of what AI could do for you today, I mean, I think just try different and see what's out there and start crafting your own idea of what you want, what it can add to your hotel operations.
If I maybe get your quick view, one of the concerns I had as people go down this route, and I'm saying I see it as a concern because it is a topic that seems to come up continually and has done for years, is this whole aspect around data and individual silos. I mean, we can all lean into AI agents, but as you've articulated through this, unless you have the data that is consistent and almost like a single source that could be utilized, you're going to get conflicting messages, conflicting answers, different tonality, different opinions. So I'm interested just in getting your take on the data element itself, because not only do we have a consolidation issue, we also have a compliance issue, because if we are now getting agents to access our data and do something with it, how do we know, how are we ensuring that that data is okay for us to use? And then the third element around data, because we see it more and more and more, are these hacks that are coming in. And if we're now building something that is going to have access to our data, does that open up a weak a weak element in the chain that somebody could exploit? So I just, just as a final thought around that data piece, what do you guys comments do you have around that those aspects?
I think, I mean, legislation around this needs to be regulated also about from a legal perspective, and it's being done sort of. I mean, Mews and Atomize will always operate, of course, within that legal framework, GDPR and stuff like that. But we will also make sure that we want to exploit as much as possible that is within that framework. But that framework as such is changing every month now. I mean, and EU has a different take on it compared to other parts of the world and stuff. But I think it comes down to, but also if you look at just by how I have been using my personal data over the last decade, I mean, it will come down to each individual eventually, that you are very cautious about sharing data about yourself and how, so it comes down to what can I share and so on.
Almost selecting what do you want to share and who are you going to share it with, and there may be individual elements depending on which one you want and what you wanted to do.
Yes, so that needs, but I agree with you, that's tricky because it's usually, it takes time to adopt since it's moving so fast now. Both legislation is always the last part, right? That comes on board when something goes south, right? So that is tricky. But I think then you have the moral stuff that it doesn't need legislation. That like, is this morally correct to use and so on? That's those discussions we also have in Mews, sort of. But it is tricky.
I think a good starting point before you implement a lot of AI is probably to just look, what is the law saying in your specific country? What is the law saying according to GDPR? How developed is it to actually also reflect AI and implementation of AI? What do you need to be cautious about? Make sure that you have that kind of overall understanding maybe before you go out.
Before you go and experiment,
exactly.
but make sure you kind of found out what the guardrails might be beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. That's just an overall advice. And as Alexandra is saying, it's changing and updating all the time. So make sure that it's up to date. But then, I mean, internally, you can always elaborate. And as long as you don't expose, sensitive data, because hotels are sitting on sensitive data about guests and guest data and so on. So make sure that you keep that in a closed environment before kind of, you go with it externally. Yeah. And then the ethical standpoint is also valuable. I think that has more to do with your own ethical standpoint, I would say.
Absolutely.
This is the same thing as for, I see it as, if you're going to, if you get ill and are you going to medicate yourself or are you going to go to a doctor?
Yeah.
If you go to a doctor, which would in this case be the hotel tech vendor, right? Asking for help with some kind of pain within your hotel, you would probably ask, just like you do for a doctor, like, do you have a certificate for running this?
Are you qualified to give me this advice?
Are you GDPR compliant? Do you have doctor's license? Before you start operating, taking away my leg. I would at least ask that before someone put a knife in my body. So that's sort of the same thing here, and that is actually a good thing that you bring up. That's also the reason why I think tech vendors, just like doctors, should do this, and not the hotels themselves do tech, because it's a lot of compliance things you need to consider as well and take into consideration.
No, makes a lot of sense. And good final point on that note. Thank you. It's always interesting to talk with you guys. Really, really appreciate your insights on this topic.